Welcome to the discussion of Part 4, Chapter 2. This chapter starts out with Raskolnikov and Razumihin hurrying to go to Dounia and his mother's apartment to that meeting with Pyotr Petrovich. And while they're walking, Raskolnikov is talking to Razumihin, and Razumihin says, "Who is that man that was leaving your apartment?" And Raskolnikov says, "It was Svidrigailov, that man that my sister had worked for, who trashed her reputation and caused all the issues. His wife is the one that we were talking about, the one that had died." And he says, "So you saw him then?" And Razumihin's like, "Yeah, I saw him." And he's like, "With your, like, that you really saw him?" And Razumihin's like, "Of course, I am good with faces. I recognize him. Where does he live? I'll go find him." And Raskolnikov's like, "For some reason, I thought maybe it was a hallucination," which is really interesting because in the last chapter, when Svidrigailov was talking to him and he asks Raskolnikov, "Do you believe in ghosts?" And Raskolnikov says no. And Raskolnikov doesn't say no right off. He says, "What kind of ghosts?" And Svidrigailov is like, "Well, ordinary ghosts." And Raskolnikov says, "Do you see them then?" And Svidrigailov's a little taken off by that. And later, even Raskolnikov is like, "What? How did I know that you saw them?" Like, he doesn't necessarily question. He's just like, "So you see them then?" And that's when Svidrigailov says, "Well, my wife has come to me every day since she died." And so the fact that Raskolnikov is now thinking that maybe Svidrigailov was a ghost or a hallucination of his. And then he's thinking, well, maybe I've just hallucinated everything like, if this guy is like a ghost and a hallucination, maybe everything's been a hallucination. Maybe I didn't even murder the pawnbroker. Like, he's just kind of really entertaining. He says to Raskolnikov or Razumihin, "Maybe I am a madman. Maybe they're right about me." And Razumihin's like, "No, I saw him." And then they get to the door or the entryway of Dounia and his mother, and they're arriving right when Pyotr Petrovich arrives. So super awkward. They're all just like walking to the door in silence. And Pyotr Petrovich, not happy to see that his orders have been disobeyed, and lets them go in first as their family and kind of waits out in the hall. And Pulcheria Alexandrovna, who is the one who's most anxious about this whole meeting, rushes out and ushers him in and, ushers everybody to sit down, sit down. And so they're all sitting there kind of awkwardly looking at each other and not saying anything. And so, of course, Pulcheria Alexandrovna goes to what she knows, which is this death of Marfa Petrovna, which should be interesting to Pyotr Petrovich because that's his cousin. And so she's like, "Oh, Marfa Petrovna died." And he's like, "Yes, and I have reason to believe that her husband, Svidrigailov, left immediately after the funeral to make his way here to Petersburg. And no doubt he's got something in mind for Dounia. And so but like, no worries. I've got people looking into this, and I'm going to find out exactly what his plans are and where he's staying. And, I'm looking into it." And they are kind of questioning him about, it seems suspicious that his wife had died. And he's like, "Well, I don't know about that. The official story is that it was all above board, but he's a bad man." And that I know of another situation where my cousin covered up a crime of his, or something that he was going to be charged with. She spent a considerable amount of money to keep it out of the court system. And there was a woman who had a young daughter, 15, maybe 14, who was special needs, like deaf, and, couldn't really take care of herself. And that he was somehow, she was found hanging. And they said, well, she was bullied by the mother. The mother was very mean to her and beat her. So it could be explained away that she would hang herself. But there had been, rumors that he had sexually assaulted this girl. And so that would have, he was somehow suspected either of, or he was going to be brought up on charges either of the assault or maybe having something to do with her murder. And he's like, either way, it's bad either way. And she protected him. And that was probably part of the reason why he was willing to kind of get out of Petersburg. And he says, but I don't believe that he also talks about another instance, and he's like, and you probably know of this, Dounia, that he was also suspected in having something to do with one of his servants who died. And she's like, well, that servant hung himself. And he's like, yes, but after all the bullying by Svidrigailov. Svidrigailov was the reason. And she's like, well, I don't know if that's true. I talked to the other servants, and they all felt like they were treated well by Svidrigailov. There was no complaint, although they did say that he was mean to that guy, but I never saw anything like that. So she's kind of defending him, which irks Luzhin. And he says, well, I don't think my cousin would have been, really kind of dumb enough to leave him any considerable money. Whichever she leaves him is probably only a year's worth of money, and it won't last him a year here in Petersburg if he goes back to his old ways of card sharking and etc. And that he lives a very, questionable lifestyle when he's in the city. And he's like, I've got, my eyes out for him. I'm waiting, I'm going to take care of it. And so at this point, Raskolnikov pipes up because he knows it's going to irk Luzhin. He's like, well, I already talked to him. He came to see me today. And everybody's shocked, including Luzhin gets a little bit of a, like here Luzhin's trying to act like he's going to be the big man. He's going to take care of it. And Raskolnikov's already seen him. And everybody's like, well, what did he want? And he's like, well, he had an offer for Dounia. And they're like, what is it? And he's like, we'll talk after. Like, basically, he's not going to talk about it in front of Pyotr Petrovich. And he said, but he also did say that he had, he gave me word that Marfa Petrovna had left Dounia 3,000 rubles in her will, and that you should be receiving that shortly. And the mother is like, oh my God, thank God. Like, she's so relieved to find out that there's, this money coming. And Luzhin's irritated because he feels like his position of being their last refuge and their only hope is made a little bit more shaky by the fact that they have some money that they can count on. So he gets up to leave, and he's like, well, I'll leave you to discuss your secrets. He's being very rude, very sarcastic. And Dounia says, no, not so fast. I wanted you here and my brother here because I want to get something settled today. And, you're asking me to choose between you and my brother. And there's been accusations on both sides. And I want to find out, I want to be sure if I have to pick between the two of you, I want to be sure who I'm picking and why. And so he is very offended by this. He feels like, how could you possibly, you've made a promise to me and you're my betrothed and you're going to even think about picking this boy over me. And she's like, what are you saying? Like, this is my family. This has been a lifetime of my life. And you think that you have an equal, footing with them. You don't. And he's super offended by this. And he turns it on the mom, and he's like, I like basically that he's the victim. He's like, well, like basically like he's got some legal standing and she's broken her promise. And she's like, are we supposed to think everything you say to us is a command and we're just supposed to do it? And she's like, what promise? And he's like, well, I've had expenses. And she's like, expenses? Like, even at this point, the mom who really wanted this marriage to go through is like, that's almost the last straw for her. Like, what expenses? The trunk that they sent for free because we paid the passage for the travel? Like, is that what you're talking about? Like, you didn't even meet us at the station. Like, even she's getting a little run down by it. And Raskolnikov is just kind of enjoying this. He's just enjoying watching this. And he's like, because this is basically proving his point. This is now showing Pyotr Petrovich Luzhin for who he actually is. And, he says, your son, he's like turning it on the mom, your son said that, that I only wanted your daughter because she was poor, and I meant it that, because she was poor, she had, greater, she was, of greater morals, and like that had made her better because she had been poor. And, he's twisting the words, and he could only have gotten that from you. So what exactly did you write to him? And she's like, well, I don't remember exactly what I wrote to him, but, if we're going off words, you wrote stuff about him too that was also defamatory. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, you said that he gave his money to, Raskolnikov pipes up and says, well, you said that I gave all my money to some woman of ill repute, when you know for a fact I gave it to the widow of the man. And that woman that you're talking about, I'd never even seen her until that day. And he's like, well, Luzhin is like, you're making my point for me, is that you just threw away the money. It wasn't, he's like kind of dismissing the fact that he had insinuated that he had given it to the woman of ill repute, Sonia. But he's like, well, I mean, you're admitting it yourself that you were careless and reckless with your mother's money. Like, my point stands. And Dounia is watching all this, and Raskolnikov can see on Dunia's face, like, that this is, how Peter's treating her, how Peter's treating the mother. And he's like, Dounia, are you ashamed of yourself yet? Like, he's proved Luzhin's proved his point for them, that, of who exactly this guy is and what his real character is. And Dounia says, yes, I am ashamed, and asks Pyotr Petrovich to leave. She's like, just go. And he cannot believe that she would tell him this. Like, he can't believe this is happening. And he's like, oh, well, I guess it's, you're feeling more comfortable. Your whole attitude's changed since you found out about the 3,000 rubles. Like, basically, like, now you have a little bit more in your hand. And they're like, well, the fact that you think that way means that we were right about how you thought you were better off when we had less. Like, you're like, everything's proving the point about who Pyotr Petrovich Luzhin is, including himself and his own words and everything that he's saying and his whole attitude, but still he can't believe it. And it says that even he gets to the point where even Razumihin jumps up and he's like, would you like your head pounded in? Like, he's even had enough of how he's treating the ladies. And Raskolnikov holds him back and is just like, no, don't touch him. And Dounia asks him to leave again, and Raskolnikov gets up in his face and he's like, you're going to go now. You're going to go. And Luzhin does leave, but even in his own mind, he still thinks like he's got a shot. Like, he's like, this can't be the end of it. Like, oh, and then at the end, he says to them that he took on Dounia as betrothed, despite the fact that her reputation was so bad, and that him becoming engaged to her elevated her reputation beyond reproach, and that maybe he was misinformed and that she really does have the bad reputation. Like, he's kind of making it sound like, if you break this off with me, it's a bit of a threat. If you break this off with me, then I will have no choice but to tell people, well, I was misinformed about her character. And I came to find out that it is what people had said originally. Like, he's threatening that is what he's going to say happened about the broken engagement. He's worried about how he's going to look with this broken engagement. He has told people that he's engaged, that he's going to get married. He's bought all these new wedding clothes, which is what you do. He's got this apartment that's being fitted out, and he's going to have to go around town and explain to people that the engagement is broken off. And he does not want that kind of embarrassment. And so he's even to the point of almost blackmailing them to keep the agreement. And even his mother's like, that's just too far. So he's asked to leave. And even in being asked to leave after all this, after all that's been said by everybody there, he's like, well, maybe I can still salvage this. I think I might be able to still salvage this. He's reeling, but he can't believe it. He's so pompous and conceited that he believes that he's going to be able to still get her to marry him. And so that is the end of chapter 2. Meet me in chapter 3 and we'll find out what happens next.